All right, so on AEP's 855 case study, Ethical Dilemma of James and David, we are going to first establish the facts. And what we do know is David and James were asked to come into the office to discuss an exchange that happened between the two before James was asked to go to the office to talk about a tardy in between fifth period in the hallway. In the exchange, James had told David to hold on to a pair of brass knuckles. When the two went to the office, it was said that James had threatened David to hold on to the knuckles and admitted to the brass knuckles to be his. With policy, the acting officer handcuffed both boys since they were both in possession of the brass knuckles at some point. James, a known troublemaker, had come clean of his actions and owned up to owning the brass knuckles and saying he did threaten David to hold on to them. David was an excellent student and has had no previous troublemaking incidents. Principal has been establishing a relationship with James that has been working for James becoming a better student. With David having no relationship with him, the principal only acknowledging him during the band concert. So those are the facts of the case. And what we now need to consider are the legal or ethical issues. So currently, no one has been harmed by the fact that someone has had brass knuckles on them. Even though James confessed to the brass knuckles being his and he was going to use them at the end of the day, no one was physically harmed. David was threatened to hold on to the knuckles and was the one that was caught with them in his possession. There at this district, the policy states it is a zero tolerance policy that includes 45 days of expulsion for possession of a weapon, and the officer has to take both students to jail and charge them with the felony possession of a prohibited weapon on school property. James was sent to the AEP program and was used to this program and could handle it, though the principal did breach the contract for David, knowing that David's future would be at stake since he was a good honors kid and a trombonist. He will write up James knowing he can handle the program, and the principal was then also notified by the director of secondary education to write up David, and if he wouldn't, he would be reprimanded. And then the principal did never file David's paperwork. So even though David was in possession of the brass knuckles, he was unfamiliar to how to even handle the situation. Mom came immediately and didn't even know the policy existed, and the principal does not write him up, knowing that this is a good kid and it was just a really bad situation for him. James, even though his mom was just like, let him sit in jail, he's been working on his growth and has been to this DAE program before. So we were just looking through legal policy and thinking of how to make the student David a better option. So in retrospect, the synopsis: an administrator is caught between the policy of his professional obligations or doing justice for his students and what he believes is right for them. As we had stated, the principal did decide to do what was right by his students and not write up David. I believe that he would have had to talk with James and maybe reprimanded him, but not write him up for a 45-day expulsion if the officer was not there in that classroom with him, since James had come so far in progressing in his nature at school. So first we need to establish the facts. First off is the people. There is the principal at the Rocket Junior High that has been making efforts to work with the troubled students and the one that is handling the situation that is occurring. James is a 15-year-old with a troubled past and is working on himself with the help of the principal. Brought the brass knuckles to school and then threatened David to hold on to them. Later, when confronted, though, admitted the knuckles were his and said this should be on him. Then there is David, the 13-year-old honor student that plays the trombone, that was caught holding the brass knuckles that James had given him. There was the police officer in the room when students were talked to about a transaction resulting in the brass knuckles to be found. He arrested David for possession and James for the confession of owning them. There is also the mother of James and David. James' mother said just let him sit in jail, while David's mother came in immediately and asked what she could do to help her son. Then there's also the director of the secondary education. Even though he has a minor part, he was the one that talked to the principal about writing David's expulsion papers when the principal did not, and then stated if the principal did not, that he would be reprimanded for his actions. All right. Establishing more facts. Is the place in the program? Well, the place was at Rocket Junior High. It's apparently on the south side of town. We have no full information about what south side means other than that he does work with a lot of troubled kids. The principal has made effort to stay late and play basketball after school and has cultivated a relationship with a leader of a group, which was James. And then the program itself is the zero tolerance policy, which has stated that both students will be expelled for no less than 45 days in the district's policy, disciplinary, and then put into the DAP, the Disciplinary Alternative Education Program. Okay. So now we need to prioritize the information. So overall, the decision would only be affecting the principal. James will hopefully become better, and David can hopefully put this all behind him. Yes, James brought brass knuckles to do harm, but he was owning up to his decisions, and no one else was harmed since the situation was talked out with the principal. James and David and the principal are the only ones that will be truly affected by this situation. James has owned up to his faults and knows how the system works and can survive it. David has no idea what is happening and only doing what he was threatened to do by James, which is resulting in potential devastating consequences that could threaten his future. The principal had to determine how to fault each student based off the policy or his own thoughts and how to handle the situation, which could result in his own reprimanding. I believe all stakeholders have been contacted that could affect any of the individuals that were at stake. I also believe the decision to be considerate and the principal not at fault, flat out. I believe I could learn more about the situation to get the facts that would make sure that the decision made was adequate and the correct decision. Though the case study, I do believe I have enough information to agree with the principal's decision, but would have liked to see if I could also have helped James in some way, rather than just throwing him into the DAE program and expulsion for 45 days. He had been owning up to his choices and took the fall by admitting his faults. So now we need to look at the options versus consequences. So our first option is to consider not do anything. Don't file the paperwork. This would result in a talking with the students and not filing the paperwork for their expulsions. With this option, the principal would be the one in trouble and would result in the principal being reprimanded for not following the policy of the district. James would have potentially done something else with the knuckles that could have resulted in harm, or hopefully he would continue to grow, making sure he does understand that his knuckles were a bad thing to bring to school, and maybe he would become a better student from there. David, I do not think would do anything bad again. Again, it was a threatening situation. He had no idea what to do about it. But I do believe the students would not have gotten in trouble, but the principal would have with option 1. Our second option is to file both paperwork for James and David. The principal would be following policy where he will not be reprimanded, and he would have done what the district wanted. James would have been expelled and would deal with the DAE program with no problem. He's dealt with it before. But I do believe David being expelled, he would not be able to deal with the DAE program and could result in a botched future. Our third option is what happened in the case study. You file James' paperwork and not file David's paperwork. The principal would be reprimanded for not filing David's paperwork. James would be expelled and could still do the DAE program with some grace. And David would not be expelled and would continue to be an honors student and hopefully a great trombonist. So now we need to look at the pros and cons of each option. So option 1 of do not filing paperwork. The pros are students will have learned a lesson, hopefully, and grow from this experience. Students would still be allowed to go to school, and the principal will feel like he did not fail his students because he is helping them grow to become better people. The cons, however, would be the principal would be in trouble and be reprimanded for not filing the paperwork, and James may not learn from this experience. Option 2 says that we are going to file both paperworks. It's going to happen. Pros, principal would not be in trouble for following policy. Cons, principal would feel bad about his ethical decisions. James and David would both be expelled, and David could have a detrimental future since he does not know how to handle being expelled or has never been in trouble in his life. Option 3, where we file James' paperwork and not David's. The pros would be David will be able to continue school and hopefully put this whole thing behind him. The principal will feel like he's not failing his students completely. The cons, principal will be reprimanded and James will not be able to grow from this experience. So now we're going to look at the best option. I believe option 3 to be the option that would be chosen and what was chosen for this case study. I would have liked to have done option 1, but I know that James had the intent to harm someone after school with the knuckles and should be reprimanded for the intent. I do not believe he should have gotten 45 days since he was improving and admitted to his faults. This option, option 3, will allow the principal to not feel like he was failing his 2 students. James will know what he was doing, but allowed himself to fess up to his actions, allowing for growth in this student. David will have had a scare that could have cost him everything, even though he was forced to hold the knuckles. He will still be able to go to school and strive for a better future. The police officer did his job, and the decisions does not affect him. James' mother would accept the outcome. David's mother would happily accept this decision since she did not even know about the policy and her son can stay in school. The director of secondary education acknowledges the decision but will have to follow through with his end in reprimanding the principal. I think the principal should personally take the situation to the school board, explaining his actions, especially since he accepted his reprimand without a second thought, knowing he has helped David out. We now need to consider the path itself. So the path of option 3, if I was in his shoes, I would choose the same one, choose that James will be written up for his expulsion and David will not be. I would follow through with the paperwork, tell the mothers what exactly is happening, and then talk to the director of secondary education, telling him my decision. In this path, I would also personally go to the school board and explain the situation, giving them the full rundown and scenario, and also including my choice to go through with James and not David. In this situation, I will probably still be reprimanded for not following the policy, but since I went to the school board, maybe they will consider making a loophole with their zero tolerance policy for this situation, like David's. If this path does not work, then I will accept the consequences and look into the policy making for the district to see if as a board they will consider making exceptions for special circumstances so administrators do not have to be put in the same situation that this scenario was held in.